Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll wait for just a minute or two for people to file in, and then we'll get started.
Should we continue our chat now that it's recording? Very relevant to the topic today.
Alrighty, I'm sure we'll have a few more people file in, but let's not wait any longer to get started. I'll go ahead and introduce Matt to everyone. So Matt's awesome. That's not in his official bio, but Matt is in this profession to help athletes and coaches take control of their sports story. As an assistant director of Olympic sports performance at Northwestern University, he is directly in charge of all performance for baseball and men's and women's swimming. With a speed development background and a fascination for data, it's his daily challenge to combine the art of coaching with the science of data. And we're so excited to have him talk to each of you a little bit more about data and sport. And Matt, I'm just going to go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you for that intro. I should definitely add the awesome piece in my next presentation. And in quotes, of course, have to give you credit. But yeah, how to apply the scientific method to sport, how we can use a relatively simple concept to help, us do our jobs better. And away we go. So I used to think that these slides were kind of cliche, but I think it's relevant to share kind of who I am. I'm a real person, not just a robot that talks about kind of sports science and speed training, but also my lens and kind of biases that I have that I've like kind of developed every stop along the way. So I played college baseball, walked on, had a nice little 4 years there. And then I did my master's at TCU, doing some stuff with the beach volleyball team, baseball, women's tennis, but mainly beach volleyball. Had my thesis published in JSCR. And then I spent 3 years full-time at TCU Boost Sports Performance, where I really developed a love and a competitive edge of speed training, specifically sprinting and linear speed. And now my current stop at Northwestern, going on a few months now, just sharing why I view things the way that I view, and not everything that I say today is going to directly apply, but what's the truth and kind of what I'm saying, and then you'll be able to figure out, or that's your challenge to kind of see how it applies, where there's a concept where you're like, oh, that's really cool, but that's not really how we do it here, or XYZ. I've my way that I look at things, but you'll be able to kind of figure out how it makes the most sense to you. So I won't do that thing where I say, raise your hand, but I'm assuming that we've all done something like this before. This looks familiar. If not, just bring back those traumatic memories from elementary school. But this is basically science, and we've all been doing it from a young age, where you have a bunch of different conditions, things that you're experimenting with, trying to grow a plant, right? So we have, just in this picture I stole, tap water, rainwater, lake, salt, bubble. What was that? Soda, maybe? And then you put some in the sun, some in the dark, some in a variety of different conditions. You write all that down. You measure it with the ruler over time. You figure out which one grew the most, and then you make your conclusions about what conditions kind of yielded the most growth, right? You have hypotheses and stuff like that. And even something as kind of casual or informal as this, the principles are the same, right? So this is an infographic that I totally stole off, or I didn't steal off Wikipedia, but this is just a fancier way to kind of show the scientific method. So you have your question or an observation, something on your mind. You have your research or your kind of rationale or logic behind it. You have what you think is going to happen. You test, you collect the data, figure out what it means, and then how does this kind of help you get better? And then I basically just remade this, but kind of with more coaching kind of language and how this comes to real life as a coach. So you coach, you do the thing in real life, you use your experience and your intuition to kind of figure out those kind of gut feelings about, oh, this would work, or I'm curious about this, or I think this will happen. So then you have your question, you figure out what you're going to do about it, you collect and analyze your data, and then you figure out what that means for you as a coach. But even in a more concise way than that, it's really just three things: question, collection, conclusion. So you figure out, you have something that's a burning question in the back of your mind, something that you want to get better at specifically, or an experiment you want to do. You do something about it, you collect your data, and you figure out what it means and how it makes you better. So a super simple kind of just three-step framework that you have: question, collection, conclusion. That's basically the scientific method. So next, applying the scientific method, or applying science to sports. So applying, that's basically what I'm going to rant about for the next 45 minutes or so. How to do this in real life, what I've learned from coaching in real life, and my kind of trials and errors and successes. Science, the scientific method. So what my previous few slides were about, right? Question, collection, conclusion, rinse, repeat. And then sport. So, you know, the golden rules of strength and conditioning, performance, whatever you want to call it, everything has to come back to, how am I either keeping my players more healthy, right? Increasing player availability, reducing the risk of injury, and or how am I getting them better? It's kind of hard to justify kind of putting any time and effort into other things, specifically with training itself. Of course, there's the art of coaching and stuff like that. But when it comes time to train, collect data, apply science, right? These questions have to be rooted in, how does this help me do my job better? Which then helps my athletes get better and stay healthier. I think we can all agree on that. So you are a scientist, whether you like it or not, and whether you care to admit or not. And I will be the first to admit, as someone who's had a title of sports science coordinator in the past, who has a thesis published in quote unquote, you know, sports science and load monitoring, that it sounds a little fancier than it is. And basically, it's just a formal way of saying, how do I apply science to getting better at sport, right? So I think a main thing to put out there, as comfortable or not as you are to admit that you are a scientist, is that anecdata counts, right? So anecdotes, these like little stories and things that we have that's very informal. Well, anecdata, this data that you have from your daily life, counts. And I've learned so many things, what to do, and also some things what not to do, kind of experimenting on my own with my own training and stuff like that. As I definitely believe a part of your own training should be experimenting. And I just have some kind of videos to share. So I got my own pocket radar, one of the best things that I have for my baseball players, messing around with a variety of different med ball throws, what I like, what I don't like, how I would recommend coaching certain exercises, trying to figure out on a belt squat, you know, what feeling do I want? How heavy should a certain exercise be if I'm going for a certain kind of adaptation or response? You know, a light would be like 100 PSI, a medium would be like 200. I know how much, you know, 3 reps doesn't feel like enough, but 10 is way too much. So I settled on like 5 or 8, and all of these small things that I would consider anecdata, right? You're the expert on yourself. You know what you want to get out of it. And even something as casual as that, right? I had a question: how heavy is heavy enough? And how many reps is enough to get the feeling that I want in my quote unquote, you know, Kaiser speed squats? And then I did it myself. And then I figured out, all right, well, I'm going to recommend starting here or here based on what I want to do. So you're 90% of the way there. So shout out to you, listener. You know, if you're attending seminars like these, odds are you care a lot, and odds are you're pretty good at what you do if you do this kind of full time. So my goal today is not necessarily, and it's actually to not kind of flip what you do 180 degrees, but basically, if we make 10 decisions in a training day, how can we just make one of those a little bit better with the scientific method, right? Being a little bit more intentional in how we collect data, being a little bit more intentional in trying to collect some anecdata on your own in your next workout or whatever it may be, because the higher up you get, the margins of improvement get smaller and smaller. And we're just one of every 10 decisions. Can it be that much better with kind of science? So how do we apply science a little bit more efficiently and effectively to help us get, you know, that last kind of 10% better as professionals? So as we all know, coaching in a field of, math and science is very gray. My mind works in black and white, but that's not how the real world is. So although I have spent times on both of these extremes, having my thesis published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, having to do, I don't even know how many edits, having, 40 plus studies that I had to read and summarize and cite and do all of this stuff and jump through all the hoops of JSCR and just the rigor that it takes to have a like polished published study from beginning to end, to doing stuff for the IRB to get your study approved to begin with, and everything kind of in between. But then also I am a real life coach, and I've had sessions of 50 plus athletes from 10 years old up to 20 out at a random field, and I have to entertain them in the, well, relatively hot Chicago July summer for an hour, right? Which is on the other extreme of casual, informal. Nothing's going to be the same every single time. But with these two extremes, kind of learning from what it takes to just coach in real life and learning what it takes to get published in a prestigious journal like JSCR, kind of where's the truth, right? And I've been able to apply my experiences of doing everything perfect and to a T for JSCR, and I make it happen and make a living coaching in real life in a variety of different situations. And I kind of put those two together into kind of making my training what it is. So the first concept to really understand is reliability and validity of data, because data has to be reliable before it is valid. So reliability is basically just the consistency of a measure if you were to kind of repeat it over time. And validity is, are you measuring what you intend or what you're saying that you're actually measuring, right? And I think this infographic does a pretty good job. So if we wanted to test a new way of training archery, test a new bow or new equipment or whatever it may be, well, if someone's always missing high, right? It's not consistent enough. So then it can't be valid either, right? But if someone's kind of all over the place, well, odds are that's like a them error, or it's the scope or whatever it may be. So I can't really test on if the training is working if I can't even get a consistent shot to begin with, right? And then we have, all right, well, something's lined up here. It's pretty reliable. It's pretty consistent if I were to repeat it over time. But if we're trying to hit the bullseye, then like I probably can't trust, how this data set would be affected by something else because it's already off the mark, right? And then this would be valid because it's on the bullseye, and it would be reliable because it's consistent enough. So I could trust not only that measure itself, but odds are if I start messing with it and changing variables, well, that change, if there is any change, I could probably assume is the change itself, if that makes sense. So a big concept in increasing the reliability of data, right, the consistency of it, is confounding variables, which sounds smarter than it is, but basically just it's something that's presence affects the relationship of stuff, to put it in a casual way. So time of day is a great example, right? How valid is an athlete's sprint times going to be if we're every day we train at 4 p.m., 4 p.m., 4 p.m., and then we have to do a week of training at 6 a.m., right? The time of day is going to affect the relationship of, training and their sprint output in that example, right? What they did the day before. I think we could all assume that, lifting or sprinting, whatever, force plates, the day after a huge doubleheader, the day coming back after like an 8-day road trip and a 5-hour flight, or coming off like a Thanksgiving break of recent, are all going to have some sort of effect on the output that we're looking at. A more specific example, med ball sizes. 6-pound med balls is that like awkward weight where it could be one of those bigger ones if you think like a traditional med ball, or one of those smaller ones if you think like a 2 or 4 pounder. And myself, I felt it, and I've gotten this feedback from athletes that they like the smaller one because they feel like, relatively speaking, they can get their hand on it more and really put more of themselves into it. So can you really trust and compare and contrast, is my training method working when half the workouts it was chucking a small six and half the workouts it was chucking a big six, right? So with all of these confounding variables and things that can affect the relationship of stuff, that's the scientific word, just write it down, because I think it's important to try to minimize these things, right? All of these things that I had to be super conscious of during my thesis. But then also it's like, just because you're trying to collect good data doesn't mean that you're going to get the time slot you want in the weight room, obviously, or when the head coach calls you and wants to change a plan or something like that. So there's real life training we have to train, but when possible, how do we minimize these factors, or at least write it down to where if something doesn't line up to what you think, you can say, oh, it was this, or it was that, or whatever it may be. And another example would be timing lasers, right? At my old facility, we had 4 timing lasers, and they were numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4, just for our sake. And if you're going to trust these timing lasers reflecting an athlete's sprinting ability, well, you should probably use laser 1 in the first slot and laser 2 in the second slot every single time. Now, that's not to say that sometimes someone would grab 1 to go off site and do something else, or use it for a pro agility, or, is using 3 and 4 going to ruin the data altogether? No, you have to still train, but when you can, be very intentional about grabbing the same lasers and the same spacing, right? So with our tripods, we'd have to break them down, move them, set them back up, move them 5 yards closer, farther apart, whatever it may be. But I took the time to line it up where I want it to be, where I thought was in the middle of, the 30-yard line and the 40-yard line for our fly 10s and our accelerations. And I traced in Sharpie on the ground around kind of each stand of the tripod. So literally it is in the exact same spot every time. Now, not to say that my coworkers would intentionally sabotage my data, but it wasn't always put in the circles every single time. Is that going to ruin the data? No. But if we're talking down to the millisecond, right, to the 0.001 seconds, if it's off by however many inches, could that affect the data? Probably, right? So that's one of those things where, when possible, what can you do to help increase the reliability of data? Because that's going to be the foundation of answering your questions and getting valid data. So this slide is a little bit kind of beyond the scope of this presentation, but I do think that it's important to put out there kind of the 4 main statistical tests that could help you answer these questions, these training questions that you have. So a t-test is basically, was there a difference between group A and group B? Was there a difference between pre and post? And ANOVA is just a difference between multiple groups, right? A, B, C, D, time point 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically a difference, but more than just 2 things. A correlation is how related is stuff. So my thesis was basically how related was heart rate load, was SRPE load, for those of you that are familiar with that, and then distance covered from the GPS. Shocker, they were related. I won't get into that, but how related are those variables? And then regression, how well can it predict stuff? So with a load velocity profile of a back squat, let's say, well, I'm going to do a light, a medium, and a heavy double. And basically, could I predict what their speed would be at a specific weight? Or you could have worked backwards and say, if I know what weight, we'll call a 1 rep max, let's just say 0.25. Well, what load would that be, right? Even though a lot of my studies, and 2 of the 3 that I'll reference, were simply just doing percentages in Excel, if your question requires something a little bit more detailed, that these are probably the tests that you're going to use. And if you're familiar with stats, SPSS is kind of the gold standard for the software, not free. So I found that Jamovi, in my own experience, does a pretty good job kind of with these tests and can do some of that like kind of next level stuff that Excel does, but is a little bit more complicated to do in Excel. So case studies, are athletes actually faster when they race? I'll show my super high level elite Olympic track stars kind of doing some races here. This question is very simple. We could all probably assume that yes, athletes are faster when they race, But instead of just assuming that, I wanted to know, is that true or not? Because if they're not, well, should I have them just sprint on their own and maybe take a little bit more time to get through the group because it's higher quality? I can watch one athlete sprint instead of two. Or if the outputs of athletes are that much greater, should I program that in even more or be super intentional about really racing every opportunity that we have? So how I set this up was, or the things that I did do and also didn't do when I set up this experiment was I kept the coaching to a minimum. So basically it was 4 sprints. I just warmed them up. I said, hey, we're going to time these 4 sprints. I'll tell you if you're racing or if you're going by yourself. I didn't tell them why I was doing it. And although these are smart kids, they could probably figure it out. Just not explicitly knowing, oh, well, he's trying to see if I'm faster, if I'm racing or not. And I'm so much faster when I'm racing. So then they try less when they're on their own, right? Just trying to eliminate that if possible. I didn't show them their times because I didn't want, oh, that was like way slower than I thought. I'm going to try even harder on this next one. I had half the kids do their first rep of 4 solo, and the other half of the kids do their first rep of race. So it was either solo, race, or race, solo of their 4 reps, because I didn't want there to be like a warm up effect. If they did a solo on their own and then they did a race after and the race was faster, well, maybe they just weren't as primed or ready to go for that first one as they were for the second one, right? So there's all of these things that I kept in mind when I set this up and when I actually coached it to help make the data kind of as not only reliable, but consequently also as valid as possible. And shocker, you guessed it, athletes are 2.5% faster when they race. There was a statistical difference, and it was a pretty big effect size. I think it was like 0.85. So not only to say that there was, a positive, 2.5%, but it was real and it was big. But it's just easier to say. People understand 2.5% more than effect sizes, I found in my experience. Next, Charlie Francis is 95%. What does that look like in real life? So if an athlete is sprinting and this is a fly 10 and their time is on the TV, we do fly 10s and 5.15s. So a 5.15, the athlete is on the 0 and the laser is on the 5 and the 15. So more of an acceleration test. So Charlie Francis says that 95% or better of an athlete's best is a high intensity, high quality speed rep, even though it's not a PR or a personal record. Because we all know athletes can't PR every day. And if I could make them do so, I'd probably be making more money than I am right now, right? So basically, how fast is fast enough if it's not your best? So if an athlete's best is 1:00, 1 second, well, 5% slower or 95%, just to keep the math simple. How often do they hit 1:05 or faster? So anywhere between 1:00 and 1:05. I wanted to know what that was like because my coaches and I, we had some kind of anecdata, not really data, honestly, just anecdotes that athletes, when they weren't feeling that good, or if they did 3 reps and their 4th one, they kind of like called it quits after that. It was usually when they were under 95%, right? So we had all of these like casual stories of there's some truth to this 95%, or like it kind of lines up when I thought it looked really bad, or the athlete thought it felt really bad, that there's something there. But then also on the flip side, it's like when we were more conscious of it, right? Because I love laminating stuff. Who doesn't? I laminated a chart of PRs, 95%, 92.5, and 90. So athletes just learned, because we do those 2 tests, basically 1 or 2 of them, basically every training session, what they're shooting for, right? Got them to buy in that they can't PR every session, right? That they were able to hit those speeds, 95 plus, pretty consistently, right? So I just want to know, how often are they below it? And basically I don't even know how many data points. I think I had 66 athletes that had 10 or more fly 10s or 10 or more, 5.15s or excels. And their average they hit was like 97.8%. And they were able to hit that percent like 88-ish% of the time. They were only under that like 12% of the time. So basically 9 of every 10 sessions, with everything going on, with all the confounding variables that you could possibly imagine in the private side of their sport coach just going crazy and running them to death, to only seeing a kid once a week, not seeing them for a month, whatever it may be, that they're able to hit these super, super high outputs. So what that means for me as a coach is when they're under, it's probably a pretty big red flag. So then tying this into daily jumps, well, what percentage of an athlete's best is good enough? Because we found, for example, just a super high quality, this sophomore in high school. If his best was 38, well, is 36.1 good? Is it bad? Should I check in with him? I don't know, but we do all these jumps all the time. So basically, could we kind of kickstart this readiness process of how high is high enough for jumps, right? The same kind of logic and rationale that we had from our previous case study. So again, there was nothing particular that we did or did not do when doing our jumps at the end of the warm-up, but I knew that we had a new jump mat last October. So I separate, even if it was the same athlete, I separated them into like 2 different people if they had 10 jumps of each, because I can't cross compare the Swift jump mat versus the My Jump Just Jump mat as well. So I knew that I was looking for this, kind of 12% of the time under 95%. So I just had all of these tests. I had 42 athletes with 10 plus jumps, and I had, 97.5, 95, 92.5, 90, 87.5, and 85. And what percent were they under those thresholds? And I found that 92.5%, they were only under like 11.7%. So pretty similar to 12. So now we know for jumps, if they're under that 92.5%, that should not necessarily scrap the whole session, but again, just open up and justify checking in this like readiness conversation. So then I saw, I was like, oh, well, also, if we know that we have these percentage cutoffs, well, can I guess how well that they're going to sprint after? And I actually found that there was no correlation in the percentage of their sprint time and the percentage of their jump time. There was no correlation. So that doesn't necessarily mean if they jump poorly, they'll run poorly. But again, just me as a coach, when I'm trying to do the best for the athlete that day, it justifies me kind of checking in with them. And next, this is a kind of case study that's only half done. So we have an overhead med ball throw variation. So this would be a supine or lying on your back, overhead med ball throw, student manager, veloing with my pocket radar. And then we would progress into a half kneeling stand-up throw. So slowly incorporating more of the body over time. And again, we would velo these as well. And then in a phase 3, if we just follow a good training progression, this is going to be kind of the faster, more complicated entire body integration, like a crow hop into a overhead med ball throw. So the logic and thought process for me is, how much better should each kind of variation be? As we slowly incorporate the body into the throw, and as we slowly increase the speeds of the variation, well, how much faster should I expect it to be? So if I know, we'll just keep the numbers square. If it's 10% better and 10% better, and an athlete's only hitting 5, well, maybe it's like a mechanical thing. They're not really good at using their lower body. So maybe I should program them that variation for 2 phases so they can learn how to do that exercise well, or whatever it may be. So there's these things that could make me better if I had this answer, right? So when I'm doing this kind of very casual, it's all in my head and all typed up in Excel, just the data points, I'm conscious of all of these things. Of it has to be the same weight, obviously. Not that athletes ever don't read their sheets, but one time an athlete made a huge jump from the week prior and said, oh my gosh, like that's great. Like how heavy was that med ball? And they said 4. I was like, what does your sheet say? And they're like, oh, it was 6, which like that happens, right? But now I know to just take that piece of data out, versus if they just made a huge jump, then I have to honor that, right? And for example, this video on the right, we would only lift in that weight room of our 2 weight rooms in the evenings. And then the weight room on the left would be in the mornings. And again, I can't change that, but I just have to be conscious of, if there's a huge jump, Or let's say we change that evening lift to a morning and it's a little bit lower, just to be conscious of that kind of over time. So I have a good question. I can kind of justify how this would make me better. And I have things that I'm conscious of that I'm looking out for in the session itself. And then I just have to collect enough data and kind of figure out how that makes me better. And what, in the example of what percent faster is it, I'll just figure that out kind of when I get enough data. So training is testing and testing is training is a quote that we're probably all familiar with. And it's worth reiterating, right? You have to start with the actual workout first. I myself have fallen victim to wanting to get the perfect data, and we have to test this, and I have to get all of the reps. And then you look back and you only got 50% of your session done, right? And I'm no rocket scientist, but the only way to increase player availability and increase performance is by actually training itself, not collecting data. So as a quote unquote sports science guy giving a webinar on how to apply science to sport, you have to actually train. So training is testing. How do you measure without negatively affecting the session itself, right? If we jeopardize player availability and performance for the sake of data, then that's kind of counterintuitive and that kind of defeats the whole purpose, right? So when you're figuring out how to turn this into real life, right, this is the applying part of it. What would the session look like itself? And of course, it's a give and a take, right? You have to give in some of the quality of the data to actually train, but then you're going to take with a few kind of variations here and there. So understanding that it's not going to be perfect, but how do you make the data as reliable as possible, right? If we go back to the bullseye example, well, if it's going to be shifted a little bit up, top left, just to say that, well, how do we just keep it as clustered as possible? And then I can figure out why it was top left kind of after the fact, because at the end of the day, we do have to train. So I'll go back to my previous kind of self-made infographic, and I'm going to add train into it. So you have your question, your logic, your rationale, your coaching intuition. Then you have to figure out, well, I still have to train. So what would I do anyways, regardless of the data itself, right? I was going to do that 3 exercise progression of the overhead med ball throw anyways. But I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to measure it. So like, why don't I figure out how much better is better and what I should expect and et cetera, et cetera. So what is the workout going to be anyways? Then how do you figure out how to smoothly and without negatively affecting the session, integrate that collection piece of it, right? And then once you have all of that, then you figure out your conclusion, how it makes you better, how it supports what you already believe, or how it changes what you believe to something else. Question, train, collection, and conclusion. There's no version of train that ended in shin. Sorry about that. So I think we can all agree that the biggest challenge in coaching is I have a bunch of athletes and not a lot of space, time, or equipment. So how do we do these things, right? In the extremes of real life coaching, and I just ranted for 2 slides about how you have to actually train, right? Being creative. And I found a lot of value in using complexes and then also racing. So a complex is just pairing together multiple exercises, a superset, a triset, whatever it may be. So this would be a sled bound paired with a 1080 sprint, rep, and then a timed sprint in the lasers. So I was going to do that anyways. I was going to do 3 rounds of sled bounding. I was going to do 3 rounds of a 1080 sprint. And I was going to do 3 timed lasers. But instead of having like 4 sleds for 12 athletes in this group in this video, instead of having 1 1080 for 12 athletes, instead of having 1 set of lasers for 12 athletes, if I can divide by 3 and just have 4 people to an exercise, right? I said 4 of you start on the sled, then you guys will go to the 1080, and then those 4 will rotate to the laser, and they would kind of just rotate and get 3 rounds in. So we're doing the same workout anyways. We're still training. We're just collecting data in the meantime, just by rearranging kind of how we go throughout it, right? And that is a confounding variable, right? If an athlete does a sprint in the lasers first, and then they bound, and then they hit the 1080, what if they're more warm for the second round? well, that's something that you just have to deal with, right? And you're more conscious of, well, let's say, if you write down what athlete is in what group, well, the next week they'll start on the sled bound, and week 3 they'll start on the 1080. So you kind of after the fact, kind of try to mitigate that confounding variable of if they're more warmed up, or you just have it random every time, and that way it's just not even a concern about athletes start different spots every single time. So I'm not going to assume that like certain ones were warm and certain ones weren't, right? And then here's an example of a barbell jump plus a hurdle jump and then a med ball throw. And I'll get to the point of racing. So that's twice athletes going at once. It makes them faster. And then also you get to have some data, an athlete in the laser itself, and then an athlete next to the laser. So next, data doesn't have to be the only thing you're doing, right? Again, it's a give and a take. So if I have to give into making the actual session work, flow, and just get all the reps done, right? Well, then I have to take just 2 of the 4 reps. So I would tell my athletes, hey, you have 4 throws, holler at the student manager to get your first 2, your middle 2, or your last 2. So yes, could they be more tired by the end of 4? That's definitely a factor. But again, if there's that randomization of all of it, then that kind of almost takes care of itself. But again, conscious of that. So not ideal, only getting 1 or 2 of the 4 reps, but it's more ideal than just abandoning it altogether. So sometimes you just have to be creative. And just because you're measuring something doesn't mean it has to be the only thing that you're doing in the workout or in that exercise or block. Closing thoughts. I'll reference my 4-piece kind of infographic. Question: what do you want to know and why? What's your logic? How would you assume that this will make you better, right? If this works out how you want it to or not, if your hypothesis is confirmed or denied. Train: how do you maintain the integrity of the session itself? Again, training is testing. Well, it can't just be testing is testing, right? To get better and stay healthy, you have to actually train. Collection: how do you make the data as reliable as possible, right? Understanding that there's so many factors under the sun that could shift the bullseye or where the athlete is shooting in this example, up, down, left, right, diagonally, whatever it may be. But first, it has to be close together to even have a chance to be near the bullseye to begin with, right? If they're scattered all over the board, you can't really take that data. So how do we just make it as consistent as possible, being conscious of all the things that could affect the data? Not that it's going to be perfect, but just when you can, I'm trying to minimize that. And then conclusion: how does this support, modify your beliefs? And again, it could be as simple as, well, I race with my athletes anyways, but it's cool to say, it's cool to know. And even if an athlete is like, can I just go solo this time? Well, no, like you'll run faster. The rep will be that much better because you're racing, right? Or modify, right? Like, I don't like this variation or this contrast effect didn't work. They didn't get as faster compared to when they just didn't do that potentiation kind of exercise or technique. So question, train, collection, conclusion. So I want to say thank you very much for your time, for the opportunity from Maddie and Landon. Shout out to you guys for making this happen, for wanting more for yourselves as professionals, and hopefully kind of learning from the extremes of my application of, well, you have perfect polished data, but then you also have to actually train that you can start to formulate how you want to answer some of your own questions in your real life. So here's a QR code to my link tree that has all of my links in it. Just scan that with your phone. My email, if you want to stay in touch, ask questions, whatever it may be, is there. And then I'm on Instagram and Twitter, probably a little bit too much, but that's probably the easiest way to access me, Coach Big Toe. And then if you like my style, this kind of like real life data-y coaching kind of style, I have longer form stuff on my YouTube and my podcast as well. And I'm sure there's 1,000 burning questions, so let's do it.
Awesome. Matt, we'll be sure to include links to that podcast with the recording here, so everyone keep your eye out for that. Before we do Q&A, I'm just gonna go ahead and open the poll. If everyone just wants to take a minute to answer the questions and then be thinking of questions you have for Matt. So that poll is open. I'll just keep that open for about 2 minutes. And feel free to add questions to the Q&A. Matt, I'm guessing there's a story behind Coach Big Toe.
Yes. So
You have to tell it.
yes, my last name is Tometz.
Right.
So my dad was called every version of Toe kind of growing up, and then that was his license plate. That is now mine, but if you see Big Toe speeding, it's definitely not me. And then my mom is Mrs. Toe. My dad, I talked him into switching to Mr. Toe, that everyone calls him anyways. And then I actually have a twin brother in that first slide who's a little bit shorter than I am, so he is Lil Toe, Lil Toe. So we're just the Toe family. So
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, just like another 30 seconds for the poll. And I see a few questions coming into the Q&A, so that'll be good. Okay, 10 more seconds for the poll. Thank you, everyone. Oh, we still got people answering. Maybe we need a little more time. Another 20 seconds. Sorry, guys. Okay, Matt, I'm going to go ahead and just ask this question while we're finishing up with the poll. If you were just starting to track sprint times, what statistical analysis would you start with?
yeah, so I think having this kind of thought process in mind of what's my question / how would it make me better, that'll help kind of logic and justify and work backwards into what stat test that you'll use. So if it's as simple as like, does this potentiation effect work? Well, you're going to have 2 sprints before it, you're going to do it, and then 2 sprints after it, right? So that'll just be a t-test. But if you want to track over time and kind of compare and contrast, we're going to do 2 sprint days on the day before a game, 2 sprint days after, 2 days on match day, +2, -2, whatever it may be. You're gonna have multiple kind of time points, and that'll be an ANOVA. So you'll just collect the sprint times kind of just as normal, but kind of knowing what sprint test or what question you have, that'll help you pick the stat test and then kind of work backwards and just organizing it in Excel or whatever it may be. So that really depends on your question. But yeah, start with the question and then you'll pick the stat test that kind of most aligns with that. But just record it the sprint times as normal.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Next question is, how involved or interested are your sport coaches with all the data? Do you have sports science interns that help, or is it all on your own?
For sure. Yeah. So I'm super fortunate kind of with my 2 head coaches that they're very empowering and letting me kind of just do my thing. But they know that there's value in kind of S&C and performance in what I do. So they're there to watch all of the speed training sessions. I'm there to talk through kind of all of my lifts with the coaches and stuff. So I'd say that they're very involved and interested in, oh, cool. Well, you learn that athletes are faster when they race. Like, even if we're doing, base running, which is typically like one guy at a time because you only have one set of bases. Well, it's worth grabbing that second base to make a fake base, right? So 2 guys can go at once or whatever it may be. So I think with all of this stuff, whether you're trying to sell, because we all have to sell our value, right? Like I'm trying to do right now. If you can tie what you're doing back to how it makes them better as coaches, or it makes the athletes better, that's how you get them super interested. So everything that I do helps me make my athletes better. And then the training is supposed to come back to the sport, right? So when I talk about, oh, I'll be able to pick variations better for their med ball throw, or I'm able to communicate with the pitching coach that he's not using his lower half very well because his med ball throw should be X amount faster, but it's only um, like a smaller percent faster, whatever it may be. So making that connection, which should kind of be there already, if you have like a good question and stuff like that, works well. We're on the quarter system at Northwestern, so we don't have interns in the fall. We'll get some in the spring, but I'm super fortunate that we have 2 student managers that help me with the med ball throws and stuff, and then with the timing lasers, I'm there anyways to kind of help run it. But yeah, more hands on deck again, so I can actually coach and do the training session itself, and then someone else, whether it's a sport coach or whatever it may be, can help with the data collection.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Next question. What have been the pros and cons of moving to the collegiate setting from the private setting?
Yeah, so my guy Connor, thank you for all the questions. I'll have to shoot you a text after. Pros, this is my favorite age group to train. You know, in the private side, we had our college kids in the winter break and summer, and those are the ones that I always kind of gravitated to the most. I like having the kind of objective, bigger thing that I'm contributing to, right? It's a team, the university winning, versus like in the private side, you get athletes that come in for a variety of different reasons. Some of them it's to get a scholarship, some of them go pro, some of them to not get cut from like JV, some of them just to get a good routine, some of them they just like kind of training. So I think having a bigger picture that's a little bit more objective, I kind of like. Cons, I just have way more athletes at once, like a big group in the private side to me, or at least at TC Boost, was like 10 or 12. And I have the 3 biggest teams besides football, or I think the 3 biggest teams, baseball, and then both of the swim teams, baseball at 35 and swimming's in the mid 20s. So I don't get to do kind of as much or be as creative because again, I have to train them. I can't be a mad scientist all the time. So those are some pros and cons.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Do you use any of this data to help with a return to play protocol? Is sports med involved in any of the data?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So with return to play, well, how fast is there, if we use sprinting, how fast is there 100%, right? Or a med ball throw, as opposed to just saying, oh, they feel 100%, or they've checked off all of the boxes of our 12-step or 12-week kind of, not ACL, but rotator cuff, for example, kind of rehab protocol. Well, is that true or not, right? Can they hit that 95% or 100% or whatever it may be? So I think as you're collecting data, right, because training is testing, then you have a huge variety and a huge pool of data that you can assess. Are they back to where they were? But then on the flip side, if an athlete is like slowly getting back, but they can't hit a PR because they're coming back from an injury, right? If they're hitting that 95%, well, yeah, that's fast enough. That's going to get you faster over time. Like you've hit that 10 workouts in a row. That's more than I would have guessed, right? Or if they're only like 5 for 10, hey, maybe we should take a step back because that's way less than the kind of 12, 13% that we're kind of used to. So just more data is better as long as you can still train, right? But that helps you answer, like, are they truly back to 100%? Can they hit stuff that's fast enough, right? That 95%. And then also, like, you can sports science your return to play protocols also. So yeah, I think this stuff has a bunch of value, not only for me, but also to tie in the athletic trainer, and whatever it may be for the return to play protocols.
Excellent. Okay, we've got 1 or 2 more. Okay, how does your approach to data and testing change with different age groups?
The younger, just throw your expectations out the window. No, I'm just kidding. So understanding that, like, with lower training ages, right? Just lower chronological ages as well, just their outputs are going to be less consistent. So just taking that into account, right? So with my racing study, I had, I think, 22 athletes, and most of them were youth and middle school. And then I had a few high schoolers, no college kids. So maybe the older you get, you can just dial in that intensity and that true 100% versus a younger kid might need a little bit more motivation of racing someone else. So I listed that as a potential variable. Is my average age was like middle school, let's say, probably like middle school plus. So does that completely apply to like college and pro athletes? You could probably guess not, but again, those are the athletes that I had in the study that I did. So understanding that, I think for the jump study, I just didn't include anyone younger than middle school, and I think I had enough high school athletes to just do that as well. So what would you be concerned about with younger kids is the consistency of the output, because again, it has to be reliable before it's valid. So either keeping that data and just knowing that it's probably going to be a little bit more all over the place, or being intentional about saying, yes, I did have 10 more athletes that I could have used, but their standard deviation was like all over the place. So like, I'm just not going to do that kind of all together. I think keeping it simple as possible. And not trying to answer too fancy of questions with them, because if you've worked with anyone, really younger than college, it's like just train consistently and odds are you're going to get better. So the simpler, the better when working with younger athletes in this kind of science data idea.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, and last question, unless anyone has another one, but last one for now. Of all of the experiments that you have run, what are the ones that stand out the most in your mind? How did you integrate those learnings into your coaching philosophy?
Mhm. Yeah, so I referenced the kind of biggest ones, or the ones that I thought were the most relevant. I mean, also the ones that are the most interesting as well, kind of in the study. But I think, like, what really fascinates you? What do you do really well? I believe some of the most value I provided my athletes is the speed training from my 3+ years at TC Boost. So I'm trying to dial in my speed training as much as humanly possible, right? And then now being an ex-baseball player, with baseball being one of my two teams, I'm trying to like lock in my med ball throws, because there's some studies out there that, like, of course, med ball throw velocity is correlated with bat velocity and throw velocity, but how much more specific can I get? I can't just do 12 weeks of the same thing, because that's not going to train them the best. If I know that I'm going to vary every 4 weeks for 3 phases, well, what can I learn from that as well? So if you had your whole, paper, your whole program on paper, and again, if you have 10 exercises or 10 techniques or whatever it may be, how can you make just one of those a little bit better, by collecting some data and running a simple test, even if it's just calculating 8%. So I think the ones that I like the most are the ones that are the most practically relevant. And some are going to be huge and change a lot of what you do. And some are going to be as simple as, I'm just going to stay the course, right? Which is just as valuable as finding new stuff to do as well. So that's just what I find interesting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. We really appreciate it. And everyone, again, I'll be sure to include some of this contact information and the podcast resource for all of you with the recording for this webinar. Matt, we really appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for the opportunity. Hopefully everyone learned some stuff, and I look forward to connecting with people who are on to learn more about what they got going on, answer some questions. And thank you again. This was awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.